All right, so hi everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's presentation, The World of Tea. My name is Nadia. I am a librarian with the Adult Programming Department at the Woodbridge Public Library. If you have any questions or concerns throughout the presentation, you can direct them to me in the chat. I'm listed as WPL librarian. All right. So all of your cameras are on, so you can turn them on, turn them off. That's fine with us. Your mics are muted. That's to help with the focus on the presentation and to help with the sound quality as well. If you have a comment or question throughout the presentation, again, you can direct them to the chat at the end. Nina's going to answer as many as she can, if she can. And if you enjoyed tonight's presentation, which you will, please remember to check out our upcoming events through our Facebook, Instagram, or our website, woodbridgelibrary.org. And now please join me in welcoming tea enthusiast and brand ambassador for Delightful Tea, Nina Androski.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I hope you all have a cup of tea next to you. I'm drinking a chamomile right now because that helps with nerves. So hopefully that'll help me be a little calm during my presentation. I started studying and learning about tea, specifically loose leaf tea, in 2006. As Nadia said, I'm a brand ambassador for an online tea company called Delightful Tea, and they sell a lot of organic loose leaf teas. So tonight I'll be mostly talking about loose leaf tea. I completed an 8-week online training with them to learn about all the different types of teas. And other than this training, I basically have just learned on my own about tea. I've gone to tea festivals, tea workshops, Japanese tea ceremonies. I drink tea every day. I love it. And I'm passionate about sharing my knowledge of tea with everybody I meet. So tonight I'm going to go over the 5 different types of teas, the history of tea, how to brew a proper cup, and the wellness benefits of drinking tea, which, you know, right now during this pandemic, we can all boost our immunity, and teas can help with that. So I am going to share a PowerPoint presentation. I have some quizzes throughout the PowerPoint presentation. So if you have a little piece of paper and a pencil handy next to you, or if you want to type the answers in the chat, I'll go over the answers. Usually when I do this in person, this presentation, I give out little prizes, but you know, we'll have to just pretend tonight. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. If anyone has any questions, you know, please type them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Thumbs up. Thank you, Marion. Marion's iPad. Thank you. So I'm going to take you on a journey tonight from tea plant to teacup. The tea is the most consumed beverage in the world after water. A lot of people think that coffee is the second most consumed beverage, but it's actually tea. Every day, about 3 billion cups of tea are consumed by people around the world. There are 5 main types of tea: white tea, green tea, oolong, black, and pu'er. And I just want you to, you know, take a look at these different types of teas for a second, because the next slide that I'm about to show you may surprise you. So all of those different types of teas, they all come from the exact same plant, and that is called the Camellia Sinensis plant. And it's a species of evergreen shrub. If it is left to grow undisturbed, it can actually grow up to 30 feet. and age over 1,000 years. But on the tea plantations, the plants are pruned to about 3 or 4 feet high so that workers or machines can easily harvest the leaves. This plant also produces a lovely flower, but they are constantly forcing the plant to produce the leaves, so the flower never gets to bloom. A lot of people may drink herbal tea, and I'm here to tell you that herbal tea is actually not true tea because it does not contain any tea leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant that I just mentioned. So here in America, we call everything tea, but the correct term for this type of beverage is comes from the French, it's called an herbal tisane. And it basically is an herbal infusion of herbs, spices, dried flowers, fruits, roots, seeds, or bark in boiling water. And all herbal infusions are caffeine free except for one called yerba mate. And I will talk more about herbal teas later. The tea plant originated in China, and the Camellia sinensis plant grows best in warm, humid climates with lots of rainfall throughout the year. So this is a perfect environment for the tea plant. Tea as a beverage was discovered by accident over 5,000 years ago. So there's a Chinese legend that says the emperor at the time, Shen Nong, was sitting under a wild tea tree plant, which again, I had mentioned can grow up to 30 feet in the wild. And some dried leaves from the tea plant fell into his pot of boiling water, and it turned the water like a dark brown, and he drank it, and he thought that the beverage was very restorative. And so he encouraged his people to drink this new beverage. Through the process of travel and trade, the tea plant was successfully replanted and grown in many other countries throughout the world. So today, the top 5 tea producing countries are China, India, Sri Lanka, Turkey, and Kenya. And if anyone's familiar with the term Ceylon tea, the country of Sri Lanka used to be called Ceylon, so that's where you get that name from. In the late 18th century, the tea plant came to America, and it was brought over here by a French explorer and botanist to King Louis XVI, and his name was André Michaud. And he brought the Camellia sinensis plant to South Carolina in 1786. And in South Carolina, there's a tea plantation in Charleston that is owned by the Bigelow Tea Company. And this plantation has bushes on its plantation that are actually descendants of the same Camellia sinensis plants that were brought over by the French botanist that I just mentioned. I visited this tea plantation a couple of years ago, and it was like a dream come true. I had so much fun. I highly recommend it. When we get back to traveling, you get to drive in a trolley, and it takes you out into the fields, and you get to see the tea plants growing. And then afterwards, you get to go into the factory where you see the tea bags being made. And the gift shop is fabulous, and they have unlimited samples of tea at the end of the tour too. So I highly recommend it. So on large tea plantations like the Charleston tea plantation, the tea leaves are harvested by machine. But for premium loose leaf tea, the top 2 inches are picked by hand, and the best quality tea is really picked by hand. So you can see here the picture that that's all they pick is basically this little bud and then the 2 leaves coming out. The highest concentration of antioxidants is actually in the top 2 inches of the plant. And the antioxidants are basically disease-fighting compounds that help your body stave off illness. So that's why tea is very healthy for you. A tea flush is the time of year that the tea leaves are plucked. So generally, tea leaves are harvested 3 times a year. The first flush occurs in the spring. After the winter, during the winter, the plant is dormant, but then in the spring it starts growing again. So the highest quality tea leaves are actually the first flush, which is in the spring. And each flush has a different flavor profile, depending on what time of year it's picked. So you might be wondering at this point in the presentation, if all tea comes from the same plant, then how do we get the different types of teas? Because a white tea is so different from a black tea. And the answer is oxidation. And oxidation is how long the tea leaves are allowed to be exposed to oxygen once the tea leaves have been picked. So basically, the same thing happens when you cut into an apple or a banana. The oxygen is hitting that piece of fruit and it's starting to turn brown. So that's exactly what's happening with the tea leaves. So how long you allow the tea leaves to oxidize before stopping the oxidation determines the type of tea you will get. So in general, the least oxidized teas are the lightest in color, and the longest oxidized are the darkest in color. There's a term in the tea industry called Kilgreen, which basically means to stop the tea leaf oxidation at a desired level using gentle heating methods. It's also called fixation. There are many different types of fixation methods based on the type of tea you're trying to make. Tea leaves can be dried in the sun. They can be pan fried, which is what this gentleman is doing in the picture. They can be roasted, steamed, blanched. The leaves can be baked in the oven. They can be tumbled in large cylinders. And it's all these different methods are, used to create different types of tea. This chart here shows basically each type of tea, how it goes through the processing process. So for example, white tea, after it's picked, the leaves are picked and they're quickly steamed, and then they're just left to dry in the sun. So white tea is the least oxidized out of all of the teas. As you move on, you can see that the process is more involved for the other types of teas. Black tea, for example, is the most oxidized, and it also involves some other steps like, hand rolling of the leaves and drying and firing. And then the last one, pu'er, which most people have never heard of this type of tea. That tea is oxidized and it's also fermented, which I'm going to go and talk about individually all these different types of teas in a minute. But here is the first tea quiz. So if you have your paper and pencil handy, or if you want to type the answers in the chat, what is the botanical name for the tea plant? Can you name one of the top 5 tea producing countries? What is a tea flush? And where is America's only working tea plantation located? So let me see, going to the chat. So the botanical name for the tea plant is the Camellia sinensis. The top 5 tea producing countries are China, India, Sri Lanka, Turkey, and Kenya. A tea flush is the time of year that the tea leaves are harvested. And Charleston, South Carolina is where the America's only working tea plantation is located. And as I mentioned, that was bought by the Bigelow Tea Company. So now I'm going to talk about each different type of tea. So white tea is made up of the buds and unopened leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant. It's actually called white tea because a fuzzy white down covers the new shoots. It's picked one time of year, that's it, in the spring. That's why it's one of the most expensive types of teas also. And as you saw in the oxidation chart, it's quickly steamed and then air dried. It's the least processed of all teas. It contains the most antioxidants because it's the least processed. So it's one of the healthiest types of teas. It's primarily produced in China. It's steeped to a very light apricot color and has a very mild flavor. I really like white tea. It's one of my favorites. If you've never tried it, I would recommend it. And silver needle and white peony are 2 popular types of white tea. Green tea is made from the young leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant. It's harvested 3 times a year. It goes through more processing than white tea. It's withered, which means they let the moisture out of the leaves. It's steamed or pan fried, and then it's rolled by a machine or by hand and dried. It's, like white tea, it is very minimally processed and contains a lot of antioxidants, and it is very healthy for you. It's primarily produced in China and Japan. In Japan, it's grown in the shade, which makes it very green. And in China, they grow it in the sun. Sencha is a popular green tea, and gunpowder is a popular Chinese green tea. And it's called gunpowder green because they roll the tea leaves into little balls, which is supposed to resemble, the gunpowder that they used to put into guns. And jasmine green tea is a lovely green tea that's scented with jasmine flowers, and it's typically served at Chinese restaurants. Matcha, if anyone's heard of matcha, that is actually green tea that has been made into a powder. So you're ingesting the entire tea leaf. And how you make matcha is you actually need a whisk, this bamboo whisk that you can see in the picture here. So what you would do is you would take your water that's been like boiled but then cooled off a little bit, and you would pour that, take a little scoop of the powder, and as you're pouring the water into the bowl, you would take your whisk and you froth it up and make sure it's all dissolved, and that's how you make a little nice cup of matcha tea. And matcha is considered a superfood. It has about 60 times the antioxidants as spinach. Matcha is also called liquid meditation because it is a calming stimulant. So the Zen Buddhist monks, to keep them alert while they were meditating, they used to drink matcha. And matcha has about a third the amount of caffeine as coffee. And it doesn't give you the jittery, nervous side effects. So I'm gonna show a little video here. This is what's called a flowering or blooming tea. And it's basically a bundle of dried tea leaves that have been wrapped with dried flowers. And I included it in the presentation because I think it's something unique that people haven't seen before. And it's really kind of cool to watch this thing unfurl in the water. So here we go. So that was pretty cool, right? The next tea is oolong. And this is made from large mature leaves of the Camellia sinensis. The word oolong means black dragon in Chinese, and it's a semi-oxidized tea. So basically, you can have an oolong tea that resembles a green tea, or you can take it all the way to almost resemble a black tea. So it just depends on how the tea master wants to process it. So if you're considering trying an oolong, just know that it could be on more like a green tea, or it could be more like a black tea. It's kind of somewhere in between. It's primarily produced in Taiwan and China. It has 5 flushes. And studies have shown that it may help with weight loss. Oolongs are one of the most complex and time-consuming teas to make. They're traditionally rolled into balls, as you can see, or the leaves are twisted. And as I just mentioned, oolong teas can resemble green teas, so they can be very light in color, or they can be almost like a black tea. So it just depends again on how the tea master wants to, process it. Black tea is probably the most familiar to everybody, and it comes from the mature leaves of the same plant we've been talking about the whole night. It's the most oxidized out of all the teas. The main countries that produce black tea are India, Sri Lanka, and Africa. And black tea goes very nicely with milk and a sweetener. Usually you don't really drink white tea, green tea, or oolong with milk. You can, but it's a personal preference, but typically you don't. But black tea does go very well with some milk and sweetener. Some different types of black teas are Darjeeling. You may have heard that. That's also called the champagne of teas because it's grown at the foot of the Himalayan mountains. And people have tried to duplicate its flavor, but they can't because basically there's another term in the tea industry called terroir. And that means that the tea leaves are influenced, the flavor of the tea leaves are influenced by the soil, the air, and basically the environment in which the tea leaves are grown. So that imparts the flavor into the tea leaves. So something that's grown at the base of the Himalayan mountains is not going to taste the same as something that's grown on the Charleston tea plantation in South Carolina. Ceylon is another type of black tea that's grown in Sri Lanka. Chai tea is black tea that's mixed with spices like star anise, cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, nutmeg, and they add milk. Earl Grey is a popular black tea, and what gives Earl Grey its special flavor is bergamot oil. And if you've heard of English breakfast or Irish breakfast teas, those are just black tea blends. So we have Ruth Bigelow to thank for introducing the first flavored tea blends to America. So Ruth was actually an interior designer by trade, but in 1945, she decided to create a new tea because she found the black teas in America to be unpleasant. She thought they were too strong and very astringent. So she was inspired by an early colonial recipe for a tea that had a black tea that had like an orange flavor. So she, after weeks of trial and error in her New York City apartment, she came up with this tea blend, which was black tea with an orange flavor and sweet spices. And she gave out this sample to a lot of her friends, and it was a big hit. Everyone loved it. And they told her that her tea was a source of constant comment. And that's how the tea got its name. And that's also how the Bigelow Tea Company was born. As I mentioned before, the Bigelow Tea Company owns the Charleston tea plantation in South Carolina. So specialty tea blends are a real big business in America, and the flavor combinations are endless. So these are just some of my favorite ones that the online company that I'm affiliated with sells. And coconut almond truffle is a black tea, chamomile mango is a green tea, watermelon oolong, and an herbal is a sweet cranberry apple. I usually make that one as an iced tea. My husband loves that one. So the last tea that I wanted to talk about is the one that I think a lot of people haven't heard of, and that's pu'er. And it's a fermented tea produced in the Yunnan province in China. And like a fine wine, pu'ers become better with age. And rare pu'ers can sell for thousands of dollars. In 2013, at a Chinese auction, a pu'er was sold for over $1 million. And this one was from the 17th century. So as you can see in the picture, the tea leaves are actually compressed into, they call it a cake or various shapes. And they can be, made into like a mushroom shape, a little bowl. And sometimes they'll even imprint or stamp like a ornate design on it. And then the top rectangular one is just was pressed into like a brick form. And basically the purpose of doing this was to make the transportation of this type of tea easier. So we're ready for another tea quiz. How does white tea get its name? Can you name a type of black tea? What is the name for powdered green tea? And what does the word oolong mean in Chinese? So white tea gets its name from the fuzzy white down that appears on the tea leaves. Some types of black teas are Darjeeling, Ceylon, chai, some others I didn't mention. One is called Assam. There's English breakfast, Irish breakfast. Matcha is the name for powdered green tea. And oolong means black dragon in Chinese. So now I'm going to get more into herbals. And as I had mentioned before, herbal tea does not contain any tea leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant. So actually, I have the word tea in parentheses because the correct term is an herbal tisane and or an herbal infusion. And basically, it's made up of herbs, spices, dried flowers, fruits, roots, seeds, or bark. This picture here is a hibiscus flower. Hibiscus tea is very high in vitamin C. It's very, what's the word, like tart. It tastes like cranberry juice, actually. So I've had this and I usually like a little sweetener in it. But basically, you can make an herbal infusion out of anything as long as you use boiling water, and you could actually even use real pieces of ginger, cinnamon sticks, peppermint leaves. These are actually my favorite herbals. I like turmeric, cinnamon. I'm drinking a lot of that these days to keep my immunity up. Turmeric has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. Cinnamon is known to increase blood circulation. I'm always freezing. My hands and feet are always cold, so I like the cinnamon tea because it helps me stay warm in the winter. Chamomile and peppermint are excellent for supporting your digestive system. And as I mentioned at the beginning, chamomile is very helps to soothe your nerves. It helps with babies that are having pain from teething. I drink chamomile or peppermint before I go to bed at night to help me go to sleep. The ginger is also very good for a sore throat. It has anti-inflammatory properties. And echinacea has antibacterial properties, and it's good for helping to fend off infections, and it can soothe the sore throat. There's a tea out there from a company called Traditional Medicines, and it's called Throat Coat, and it has echinacea in it and marshmallow leaf and licorice, and it really does help to soothe your throat. Rooibos is another type of herbal infusion, and it's a plant native to South Africa, and it's a part of the legume family, actually. It's also called red tea, and it brews to a lovely deep red color, and it's rich in minerals. So if you want to, try loose leaf tea, you are going to need a couple things to help you. In this picture, there's an infuser basket that you can see here, a teaspoon, and you need a teapot or a mug, a timer, and, you know, I recommend fresh filtered water instead of tap water if you can, or bottled water. And then you need your loose leaf tea or your herbs. And basically, if you want to make, oh, actually, you can also make your own tea bag here. So the bottom of this picture, these are tea sacks, and you can fill it yourself and make your own tea bag. So if you want to make the perfect cup of tea, the ratio is 1 teaspoon per cup of water, and a cup of water is usually like 6 to 8 ounces. And that's actually why it's called a teaspoon. You want to make sure you're using the correct water temperature. So for white tea and green tea, you don't want to use boiling water, because if you put boiling water on top of these delicate tea leaves, you're going to scorch the leaves and it's going to become bitter. So I recommend letting your water boil and then letting it cool off slightly, like a minute or two, and then pour it over your white tea or your green tea. The other thing is for herbal and for black, you actually do want to use boiling water. So you can let your water come to a full rolling boil and pour it directly onto black tea or herbal. Oolong is kind of that middle one, and you would just have to look on the package that you have and follow the directions, because it could be like more of like a green oolong. So you not want to use boiling water, or if it's more of like a black tea, then you would want to use the boiling water. And pu'er, which I'm not sure many people would have that, but that one you also want to let the water cool off slightly. So the only other thing that you want to think about when brewing a cup of tea, and this applies to a tea bag as well, is the steeping time. So for white and green tea, you only want to steep it for about 1 minute to 3 minutes. And for herbal and black, you would steep it about 5 to 7 minutes. If you steep it too long, then your tea will become bitter. And also, a lot of people will take their tea bag and wrap it around a spoon and you know, squeeze everything they can out of it. But what you're actually doing is just squeezing out all the tannins that are in the tea, and that's going to make your tea very bitter. So I don't recommend squeezing your tea bag, but you can squeeze an herbal tea bag, because herbals don't have tea leaves, so you're not going to get any of the bitterness. But the most important thing I think of when drinking a cup of tea is to just kind of be in the moment while you're making it. You know, maybe as the kettle is boiling or your electric kettle is going, you know, just take a moment and be still for a second. And then as your tea's steeping, maybe you can watch the steam coming up. And then as you're drinking it, just be in the present moment. So I'm going to show this little video of how to drink tea mindfully.
We have the practice of tea meditation.
Tea meditation.
Yeah. So when you pick up your tea, you might like to breathe in order to bring your mind back to your body and become completely fully present in the here and now. I don't think of the past anymore. I don't think of the future anymore. I am free from the past, from the future. And there is a real encounter between me and the tea. and peace, happiness, and joy is possible during the time I drink my tea.
Well, I never had that much thought about a cup of tea.
It takes 1 hour to just enjoy a cup of tea.
A cup of tea like this?
Yes.
1 hour.
Brotherhood and sisterhood. And every moment is a moment of happiness.
So I did want to talk about tea bags. In 1904, tea bags were accidentally invented by Thomas Sullivan, a New York tea merchant. So the story goes that he was sending out samples of his loose leaf tea to customers, and he happened to put them in silk bags, and the recipients believed that they should be dunking those silk bags into their water. And afterwards, he got a lot of requests for these tea bags, and so that's how the tea bag was invented. The main difference between loose leaf tea and a tea bag is basically loose leaf tea is the whole leaf. Tea bags are getting, there are tea bags out there that are, pyramid shape or like silk bags and that have the whole leaves in them, but most commercial tea bags are, you can see that the leaves are cut up in order to fit into the tea bag. With loose leaf tea, you can actually steep the leaves multiple times. And basically, the leaves have more room to expand because they're not confined by a tea bag. And as a result, more flavor and aroma can come out. Traditional tea bags are, very convenient, but as I mentioned before, you can actually make your own tea bag. They sell, my company sells, and they're on the internet, paper tea filters. Wanted to talk quickly about caffeine in tea. I get the question a lot about, how much caffeine is in this type of tea? And I've learned over the years to just answer the question by saying all brewed tea contains some caffeine, because caffeine is a natural compound that's actually found in the tea plant, and it's a natural bug repellent, basically. Helps the tea plant defend itself against insects. What I found interesting is that tea leaves have more caffeine in them than coffee beans before they're brewed. But after you brew a cup of tea, tea actually has less caffeine than a cup of coffee. Caffeine from tea is thought to absorb more slowly in the body than caffeine from coffee. But if you truly don't want any caffeine, in your system, and if it causes you to be jittery or anything like that, you want to stick with the herbals because those are caffeine free. This is the last quiz, I promise. Can you name a type of herbal infusion? What country is rooibos grown in? True or false, boiling water is the correct water temperature for green tea and white tea? And true or false, Sir Thomas Lipton invented the tea bag? So, I could list a million herbal tisanes right now, but the ones that I kind of mentioned in the program were chamomile, peppermint, ginger, turmeric, hibiscus, but there's so many out there. South Africa is where rooibos is grown. This is false because you want to not use boiling water. You want to let it cool off slightly. And Sir Thomas Sullivan invented the tea bag, not Thomas Lipton, although he had his own, you know, tea company. So I just wanted to touch quickly upon afternoon tea, because a lot of people enjoy going for afternoon tea. And we have Maria Russell, the Duchess of Bedford, to thank for this tradition. She was a lady in waiting and a lifelong friend of Queen Victoria. And around the same time each day, about 4 p.m., she started to get what she called this sinking feeling. And dinner was served very late in those days. So she started asking for a little snack to be brought up to her room, to be taken, you know, privately. And it was basically just a cup of tea and some little sandwiches. And after a while, she started inviting her friends to join her, and on a daily basis. And the idea soon spread. And this is how the social occasion and tradition of afternoon tea started. If you haven't gone for an afternoon tea, it's basically a light meal taken between, you know, 3 and 5, consisting of 3 different courses. It's also called low tea because it was served on low sofas and chairs, and it became a social event for the upper class. Here's a picture of some women, you know, having an afternoon tea on the low table. So what is high tea? A lot of people call afternoon tea high tea, and that's actually incorrect. And a lot of the tea houses in this area, on their menu, it says high tea, but it's actually not accurate. High tea was basically dinner for the working class, and it was also known as meat tea. And it consisted of, you know, potatoes and beans and eggs. And it was traditionally served on a high table, which is basically a dining room table. So in review, all tea comes from the same plant. There are 5 main types of tea. Herbal tea is not true tea. The level of oxidation determines the type of tea. All you have to do is remember to use the correct water temperature and steeping time to make the perfect cup of tea. Afternoon tea is the one with tea sandwiches and scones, and the one with meat and potatoes is called high tea. And tea is very good for your health, so drink as much as you can, and it helps you stay warm these days too. So thank you for joining me. If anyone wants to contact me after the presentation, my email is teatimewithnina@aol.com. And the website that I am affiliated with that sells all the loose leaf organic teas is tealightfultasters.com/Nina. So I'm gonna stop this and
All right.
see if anyone has any questions. I couldn't find, I don't know if anyone typed in the chat because I couldn't see. Oh, okay, I do see them now. I apologize, everybody. Nadia, should I go through these questions?
I mean, I don't know if you want to go through them or I can read them off for you, whichever way works.
I can see the first one. So
okay.
I did, there it says, have you read The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane? I haven't read it, but I actually provided Nadia with a handout that has a list of fiction books on tea and then other books on tea that I recommend. So you can email her if you want to get that list.
I plan on emailing everyone the list. You also included a really awesome recipe for them and also a link to this presentation as well. So you're going to get a follow-up email with a lot of information.
Yeah, I have a handout with steeping instructions. So what is a good tea for sleep? I like chamomile before bedtime. It's definitely, caffeine free, and it does have the properties of like relaxing the nervous system. But with any of the teas that I'm recommending, I would, just put the disclaimer out there to like check maybe, with a physician or your own, your own body, just if you're taking anything, just to make sure things don't interact. But in general, that one should be pretty harmless. So some of my favorite places to go for afternoon tea are actually, I'm actually up in Bergen County, North Jersey. So up here, there's one called High Society. There's one down in South Jersey in Flemington called Tea Berries. There's one in Chester called Sally Lunn's or Sally Loon's. New York are a lot of great ones. Yeah, those are the ones. Although there's one in Westwood, but that's Bergen County. It's called Harmony Tea Room. So there are a lot of good ones. So the French spelling or the can you remind me the French spelling and pronunciation for herbal tea's proper name? So yes, that's herbal tisane. So Tisane. Everyone got all the questions right. You guys are awesome. I wish I could give you prizes like I normally would do in person. I have great little tea candies that I give out. You guys did such a great job. Yeah, licorice tea is really good. It like coats your throat. Ooh, fennel. Fennel's a really great one too. That I actually make a cup of fennel tea after dinner every night because I have digestive issues. So it actually like helps digest my food. Oh, someone says, what is orange Pico? Everybody thinks that is a type of tea. And I believe that actually, if you go to the supermarket, you could probably find one that's called orange Pico. And then people think like it tastes like orange. But orange Pico in the tea industry, they grade tea leaves, and orange Pico is a grading of a tea leaf. So there's more high quality tea leaves and then lower quality, and orange Pico is a grade level for the tea. Yeah, I didn't mention the Boston Tea Party, but that is one of the main reasons why America is really not a tea drinking country. We are a coffee drinking nation, Starbucks everywhere. And I looked into this, and we actually, in colonial times, people drank tea. But because of the Boston Tea Party and, England having the taxes on the tea and everything, people actually thought that by not drinking tea, it was like a patriotic thing to not drink tea. So then people started drinking other beverages, and tea kind of, got taken over by coffee and other beverages. But had it not been for the taxation and the Boston Tea Party, I really truly believe we would be more of a tea drinking nation than a coffee drinking nation. So Pu'er, does Pu'er have caffeine? So all the 5 teas that I mentioned, they all do have some caffeine. So if you definitely want to stay caffeine free, stick to any type of herbal. Sage is another great herbal infusion. You can make herbal out of anything, really. And you can make your own blend. I like Mary says you can add ginger to like a green tea. So you can at home, you can start like, you know, making your own blends. We are recording this, so you can go back and watch it again if I went too fast or, you know, to take notes. Yeah, Pu'er, if you did want to try it, you can just Google it and buy it on the internet. My sister-in-law went to China and she brought me back a Pu'er cake, so I have that. I don't want to use it though because I like showing it in my presentation, so I haven't used it yet. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to try loose leaf tea, you can pop on the website that I'm affiliated with, or just Google, you know, loose leaf tea, and there's so many companies out there. But I would recommend, if you haven't tried it before and you want to, you know, try loose leaf tea. I do think you will taste the difference. Just going through everything. Good question. Can you tell us if tea and tea bags expire? So I wouldn't say expire. I would say just maybe like the freshness would, you know, go down a little bit, but expire, like you wouldn't get like sick or anything. A lot of people keep the loose tea in like a nice airtight canister on their kitchen counter. That's a good idea. Maria L, elderberry tea. So elderberries is really good right now for immunity. It's high in vitamin C. And you can make elderberry syrup too. But if you wanted to try elderberry tea, you could just Google it online. Convent Station, Cozy Cupboard Tea House. Yes, I have been there too. It's near like Morristown. That's a good one too. Thank you, Cynthia. Another good tea place. So for the fennel tea that I make every night after dinner, I basically just take whole fennel seeds and I take a teaspoon and then I kind of crush them a little bit just to kind of like awaken them up. And then I put them in boiling water and I let them steep for like 5 minutes, and then I strain the seeds out. And then that's it. So what about decaf black? So, you know, you can find tea out there that's decaffeinated. What I usually tell people is it's still going to have a little bit caffeine in it. It's called decaffeinated, but they can't really extract entirely all caffeine out of it. A lot of people also have told me that they'll pour the water on the, you know, tea bags for a couple of, you know, seconds, dump that out, and then, you know, make a second cup of tea, and that there's less caffeine in that. I don't know if that's true or not, but just there really is caffeine in all types of tea. So if you really truly want something that's 100% decaf, caffeine free, stick to herbals. Are there recipes for plain ginger tea? So I will actually go buy the ginger root in the supermarket, cut off a little, peel it, cut off a couple slices of it, put it in boiling water, let it steep for like 5 minutes, strain out the little pieces of ginger, and that's it. It's so great. It's like so fresh. It's like, but you can also buy ginger tea bags too. Yeah, let me type in the chat to everybody my website and email in case you missed that last slide. Does this go to, let me see if it goes to everyone. Okay. Ooh. My email, teatimewithnina@aol.com. If you have any questions after the presentation on how to steep anything, you need some recommendations. And then my website is yeah, I'm a brand ambassador for this company. So actually on the steeping handout that you'll be sent, if anyone does want to try, you know, a new type of tea from my company, gave you a code and you can get 10% off. So thank you so much, everybody. This is like the best turnout ever. This is the most people I ever had. I'm so excited, but I just love tea so much. I'm so passionate about it. And I want everyone to, you know, make a nice proper cup of tea and not drink any more bitter tea. So just remember, you know, steeping, the water temperature and steeping time. Don't squeeze your tea bags. And I think everyone will make a great cup of tea. I wish you all good health, strong immunities. And if you have any questions, please contact me. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you everyone again. And thank you, Nina, for coming out or staying in. Thank you for speaking with us. We appreciate it. And again, thank you to everyone who participated and viewed this presentation. And I hope everyone learned more about what they can be achieving with their tea. So thanks again, everyone, and keep track of our events. We have a bunch of stuff scheduled for February. So thanks again. Night, everyone.